Alright, I'm making a brief update video to address a couple of questions I've had to answer quite often recently, and these are: why am I not uploading as often as I used to, and why am I not making videos about Baldur's Gate 3, and will I ever get into it, and so on. Let's start with the Baldur's Gate question. The game has recently launched officially and has apparently exploded in popularity. The reason why I haven't started making videos about it is I suppose I still feel a little burnt out from it. I've played the game for about 200 hours throughout early access, and I have replayed Act 1 probably 10 times. The last proper playthrough I did was, I believe, during the Bard patch, which was nearly a year ago, and then I started once again in the Paladin patch, which came out about 8 months ago, but I only went halfway through, I didn't finish it. Now, many of you should know that I've played The Witcher 3 far longer, about 2,200 hours to be precise, and somehow I'm still invested in it, so what gives? Well, I suppose I couldn't quite get into Baldur's Gate to the same extent. I started playing early access with really high expectations because I like D&D, I like Dragon Age Origins, and I like Divinity Original Sin 2. And the way I see it, Baldur's Gate 3 is sort of a mixture of these three games. And I will definitely try it again. They've certainly made further improvements over the past 8 months, and there's definitely more content now that it's not only Act 1, but I simply feel kind of weary of the thought of going through the first act once again. So I've decided to wait a bit, give Phantom Liberty a try first, that is Cyberpunk's expansion, which is coming out in a month or so. I haven't played Cyberpunk in quite a while as well, and I'm not sure if Phantom Liberty will invigorate me enough to stick with the game after I'm done with the new content. I doubt it, honestly, and afterwards I do plan on giving the full release of Baldur's Gate a proper try. Now, if you want me to be a little more specific about what is it that I don't like about Baldur's Gate 3, well, I do like the game in general, otherwise I wouldn't have spent that much time replaying the first act. The game is big and ambitious, and it was obviously made by people who cared, who put a great amount of time and effort into it. It has an awesome soundtrack, the composer is a fellow Bulgarian, so I don't wish to give the impression that I dislike the game. But if I had to point out a few things, and take this with a grain of salt because I haven't actually played outside of early access, one thing would be the gameplay. I have no issues with the combat rule set when playing actual D&D, but somehow when it is translated into video game format, and especially single player, I don't like it as much. I find myself missing the combat in Divinity Original Sin 2, despite having its own flaws like over-reliance on crowd control and teleportation, and I think my issue with Baldur's Gate, at least to some extent, revolves around the higher RNG and the higher likelihood of failure. In a tabletop setting, where you have every player doing their own roles and dealing with their own failures, in addition to the game master interpreting every action, it works much better, I think. But in a single-player video game, you have one person strategizing and synergizing every action of every character, and it sometimes leads to frustration. In my playthroughs, I nearly always had some sort of plan or strategy in mind, and it usually ended up not really working, and I had to revert to simply hitting them very hard and very fast and hope that they die before I do. Perhaps it gets better as you keep leveling up, but that would depend on the way enemies scale as well. And in terms of the plot, the writing, the characters, the cutscenes and all that stuff, well, it's a little harder to give a precise answer. Once again, Baldur's Gate 3 is by no means bad in that department. If I were to compare it to The Witcher 3, because naturally I compare everything to The Witcher 3, I think The Witcher strikes a very good and delicate balance between, on one hand, being cool and awesome and epic and exciting and memorable and emotional, and at the same time staying relatively grounded and feeling natural, while Baldur's Gate 3 seems to lean a little too much towards the former while sacrificing a bit from the latter. I guess you could say that the game can be somewhat edgy or over the top, or maybe I'm just getting old. I was also not a big fan of the pacing of romances. For example, there is a quite obviously scripted romance night at the end of Act 1, where everyone suddenly either wants to have sex with you or has a strong urge to tell you why they don't want to have sex with you. It's actually the polar opposite of Divinity 2, where romances take quite a long time to build up.
Let me come to know you.
Well, minus that one incident with Fane, I suppose. I had a suspicion that the developers simply jumbled that part a bit, just so they can have it in early access and give people a taste of it, so to speak. Because, let's face it, romancing your companions is a great part of the reason why many people play similar games, but overall it felt a little off to me. Although, once again, I haven't played the game for the past 8 months or so, and some of that could have already changed, so I won't speak more of it. And to be honest, I don't really have a lot more to say in the negative column. Okay, that about sums it up on why I'm not currently playing Baldur's Gate. Now, to address the less regular uploads. To a large extent, it's related to something that I haven't really talked about before, and it has to do with the health issues of one of my daughters. The little one, specifically. She's soon to be 3 years old, and it's not too serious, like it's not life-threatening or anything like that, but it's also not too casual either, and it has been taking a bit of a toll on me. The extra time and dedication that's required, along with the general worrying, has not left me in the most creative of moods, and I also haven't had much of a desire to be on the internet, I guess. Other than reading my YouTube comments, I've basically stopped engaging with social media, and I barely keep up with my own Discord as well. Now, will the situation improve? Well, I hope so, yes, but it will likely take a while. And there's some more to it as well. Over the past couple of years, really, I haven't been very lucky with the games I was excited for and wanted to make videos about. The older subscribers among you should remember that I wasn't exclusively a Witcher-related channel, but I've sort of unintentionally became one. I quit World of Warcraft during Battle for Azeroth, I ended up quitting Star Wars The Old Republic, which is the game that got my channel started nearly 12 years ago. I even heard BioWare stopped working on it altogether. I was kind of disappointed by Assassin's Creed Valhalla. Cyberpunk, of course, didn't quite measure up to the massive hype surrounding it. I remember how excited I was. I bought pretty much the best gaming PC money can buy here in preparation for it, and while it's not a bad game, it just didn't really do it for me the way The Witcher does. I was also really looking forward to the KOTOR remake. That, along with The Witcher 1, has been one of my most desired remakes, and it got cancelled, or like delayed indefinitely. And of course I was quite excited about Baldur's Gate 3, of which I already talked about, and I haven't exactly given up on it. So we shall see how things go after I've played through Phantom Liberty and Baldur's Gate, but I suppose there is a chance that I simply revert back to The Witcher. Sadly, that game has sort of ruined other games for me, and if I don't find one that I like about the same, I just won't be able to bring myself to create similar content about it. And if things go in that direction, I may actually have to maybe even consider quitting YouTube, or at least scaling it down a lot, because while I still have quite a few things I wish to talk about and show you in The Witcher 3, it's not as much as I did 3 years ago, or 2 years ago. You get the idea. There are a couple of other games that I've been enjoying of late, but it's nothing I'd consider making videos about. I know some of you have been asking me to cover The Witcher books, which may be something I end up doing in the future, but let's not go that far just yet. So I think that covers it all. I'm now jumping back into The Witcher 3 for some more interesting details, hopefully, and then I'll be trying Cyberpunk and Baldur's Gate once again, and we'll see what happens. Until then, thank you very much for watching, thank you for your support, stay tuned, and be good.